there's been a real lot of common themes throughout the conference in terms of we need to engage with the community more, we need to engage with the regulators, the politicians in terms of the mitigation strategies. So we just don't put the same thing back, that we've got to put the effort in up front before the bad stuff happens and make sure that we protect it, whether it be modifications to our building education, making sure we get the right messages out there to use the right materials for the right design cases so they can withstand the next cyclone.
The key is to share the responsibility, to work on every aspect of disaster management. We're very good at responding, agencies are very good at responding, but it's the hard work that needs to be done in the mitigation, the preparedness, response and also recovery that'll make disaster management more efficient and of course community safety even better.
If you look, for example, at the finding of the Productivity Commission report a couple of years ago, they said this country is spending 97% of our disaster funding on response and recovery, 3% only on mitigation. It's that balance, that equation, I think, that we need to rethink and recalibrate.
Right, I think one of the big challenges is kind of the notion of issue salience. How do we get government and this larger network of players to think creatively and collaboratively before a disaster ever occurs and plan for the eventuality of what are going to be the impacts? But the challenge is how do you do that in a way that recognizes that this may not be the most salient issue. There may be issues associated with a downturn in the economy or building infrastructure or making sure that children have adequate education. Those are issues that are day to day sometimes are at the political forefront. The issue of pre-event planning for post-disaster recovery isn't always the most pressing until, of course, the disaster happens. And because of that, if you haven't done good planning in advance of the disaster, the recovery process can be slow and painful, laborious, inequitable, and so forth.
While it's an economic argument, it's not often demonstrated what the economic savings are through mitigation. And so for treasuries and finance, when agencies come and say spend money on mitigation, it's much more difficult to say spend something that will potentially avert a disaster as opposed to helping a community recover after a disaster. So I think one of my messages today is that we need more economic analysis, more economic studies. The old saying, money doesn't talk, it screams. We need to actually demonstrate to our political leaders what the long-term economic savings are. This, if you like, would be an example of microeconomic reform. That is, investing in mitigation should be a microeconomic reform.
It's interesting from the political perspective. There is a lot of research that will say that a politician giving money post-event builds political capital. But as soon as you have a politician asking the community to do something, then that will quickly erode political capital, and we've seen that time and time again with studies in the US and other places. What the CRC can do to help that is to actually start to build the evidence that underpins why mitigation is better. The industry as a whole, in general, is actually fairly bad at doing the economic studies. It doesn't count things very well, it doesn't measure the saves or the benefits very well. So the CRC has got a major stream of work around trying to develop those economic policies, those economic models, so that we can actually start to develop the underpinning arguments of, even if it's going to cause negative political capital, the investment is so good that it makes sense to do it.